But first, it's another week and another farcical accusation by Labor as it attempts to muster support for the Indigenous voice to Parliament. The race-based referendum it is trying to guilt Australians into supporting. Just over a week ago, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese got personal, accusing those opposed to the voice of peddling misinformation and trying to fight a culture war. Yes, trying to enshrine toxic race politics into the Constitution is not waging a culture war, but resisting it is. Well, according to the Prime Minister and his media cheer squad anyway. This week, Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney warned Peter Dutton to not make the same mistake again, referring to his boycott of the apology. Well, Burney is a great one to talk about not making the same mistake again. Remember what she said in her maiden speech to the New South Wales Parliament back in 2003. She said, "For the first 10 years of my life, like all Indigenous people at that time, I was not a citizen of this country. We existed under the Flora and Fauna Act of New South Wales." As we know, that act never existed. The 1967 referendum, which Burney alluded to, had nothing to do with citizenship, which Indigenous people already possessed. That dangerous lie about Indigenous people being considered flora and fauna is one that many activists repeat, despite the number of times it has been exposed as an urban myth. But one doesn't expect a politician, a senior politician, to fall for such a lie and to spread that disinformation. And for Burney, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't just a mistake she made in an important speech back in 2003. She has repeated that damaging untruth over and over.
I don't remember the referendum explicitly, but I do remember there was something exciting going on at that time as a small child. But I know that before I was 10, I was in some way a non-citizen. I was born at a time when the Australian government knew how many sheep there were, but not how many Aboriginal people. I was 10 years old before the 67 referendum fixed that. The first decade of my life was spent as a non-citizen.
And even after the left's beloved ABC refuted that claim with a frankly devastating fact check, calling the flora and fauna claim a myth, and concluding Aboriginal people in Australia have never been covered by a Flora and Fauna Act, either under federal or state law. Even after the ABC fact-checked that lie, Linda Burney continued to repeat the untruth. Here she is speaking after the death of the Queen.
I was born 4 years after Elizabeth II was crowned. I also grew up not being counted as an Australian and not enjoying the same citizenship rights as others did.
Mind you, Linda Burney is in good company.
We recognised, of course, the rights of Indigenous Australians to be citizens in the famous referendum in 1967.
And for years, the national broadcaster let this claim go without challenging it.
On May 27, 1967, Australians voted in a referendum to change how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were referred to in the Constitution. So how far have we come since 1967? Prior to that, many Aboriginal people did not have basic human rights.
As Aboriginal people, we are excluded. You know, for such long time, we were regarded as flora and fauna.
Aboriginal people did not have equal rights until my mother was born in 1965, and she was not considered a human being until the referendum came through to the Flora and Fauna Act in 1967. The equal rights are not even.
Indigenous Australians weren't even classed as citizens. My father was born before 67, so my father wasn't even classed as a citizen when he was born.
Truth-telling is remarkably selective. Well, at the ABC anyway. What else would you have us believe, Linda Burney?
Just how important that ancient tradition of acknowledgement of country is. It is not a new thing for those of you that think it might be. It is something that has been practiced for many, many thousands of generations and has had life breathed back into it in the last 10 or 15 years.
Oh yes, the welcome to country and acknowledgement of country that goes back thousands of generations to 1976 when Ernie Dingo helped invent it. Unbelievable stuff. Who is Linda Burney trying to kid here? It's almost as if she's so full of herself that facts become irrelevant.
I've changed the world by being the first Aboriginal person elected to the New South Wales Parliament and, remarkably, the first Aboriginal woman elected to the House of Representatives. I've also changed the world by displaying grace and kindness.
Enough said.